In this video, we're going to look at adding behaviors to the graphics and sprites and text in this game to make everything function correctly. We add the code to the variable event sheet. There is nothing in this sheet at the moment, and for me to add the first part of this project, I can move over my sheet, either click Add Event or right-click. I'm going to right-click with my mouse, and I'm going to add a thing called a global variable that I've explained, and I'm going to call this variable counter. This is going to count seconds in the game. Right, so my initial value is going to be 0. This variable is a number. It can be two things, a string, which is a selection of numbers, or a boolean, which is like a light switch. It's either on or off. I'm going to stick with a number and click OK. Now I have my global number. I can start adding, attaching this counter to a text in my page that's going to record that counting in a visible way. So back to my event sheet, I can click Add Event, and then I want the system to connect to a text box to give us some information. So I double click System, and then in my search box I type every, and we have two options. Every tick is every time the computer reads the code in the game, and every X seconds is every time it can count in normal seconds. So I'm going to click every X seconds, and my interval is 1 second. So every 1 second, I want to set my counter text box to record the time. So let's have a look at my object types here. I've got text1 and text2, so that's not very handy for a label. Let's go back to my sheet and click on counter. This is called text. So I'm going to rename this text box counter and text2 as health, so I know which is which. Okay, so let's get back to our variable events. So I'm going to add an action now, and I'm going to say I want to connect to counter, and I want to set my text to a value. So if we look down here, you can see that set text is highlighted. That is because that's a very common thing that people use. So I'm going to double click set text. And then I have some speech marks in my text box. And this is to allow me to put visible and invisible values or numbers or words into my text box. So inside the speech marks is visible, so I'm going to type counter, and put a semicolon and a space, because I want to space. I want the value to appear here, but we need that space to make it look a bit better. I'm going to click outside the speech marks and type in the symbol and then the name of my variable, which is counter. It's very important that you use the same spelling, but when I typed that in, I had a drop box, and here is my name of my global variable, counter. Okay, that's done. Now let's get back to my variables page. And actually, I'm going to remove that type out of there because it's going to be loaded dynamically via the code. So just click OK. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, now what's happened is I've set the global number to 0, and every 1 second, I'm asking it to set the number of counter into this text box, but of course nothing has happened. We have to add 1 to the counter every 1 second for this to work. So let's close this and add another action. So add action, system, add two local and global variables. So this is a global variable. and I'm going to choose 1, and it's selected counter because that's the only global variable I have. Let's go done. Now, let's restart the game and see what happens. Now we have counting happening. Good. The next thing we want to do is use that counter to change the animation of the face. So I'm going to add another event down here, system. And what I'm going to do is compare variable. So counter, when it is less than, and I'll give a value of 5, or greater than, sorry, 5, I want the face to go from happy to sad or sad to happy. Let's have a look. So for me to apply an action to a sprite, I need to call the thing that I want to change, which in this case is the face. And then what I want to do is set its animation frame. And down here we see we've got set animation and then set frame. So I'm going to go set frame to 0. Let's see if that's the right frame number, because I've got 0 and 1. So let's check this out. And now he's happy.